Before you listen, I need you to understand something. What you're about to hear isn't a story. It's a testimony pulled from an encrypted file that surfaced briefly on a forgotten corner of the web before being taken down. No one knows who uploaded it. Some say it came from a NASA contractor. Others think it's just another creepypasta. But here's the thing. The voice in this recording sounds too real, too scared. Tonight on NightLore, we bring you the Lookback. There's a reason the government hides what it hides. UFOs, UAPs, whatever name you want to use, it doesn't matter. What matters is that one day soon, they'll have no choice but to admit a piece of the truth. Not the whole thing. They'll never tell you the worst of it. That's why I'm telling you now before I die. I know this won't stay online for long. I can almost feel someone watching my screen as I type. My computer's been compromised for years. So listen carefully, because what I'm about to say isn't a theory. It's a confession. I used to be a wildlife photographer. Not a famous one, not even particularly good. Just a guy who spent his life waiting for the right light to hit the feathers of a bird, the breath of a fox in winter, the movement of something alive. Then one morning, two men in black suits knocked on my door. They said they were from NASA. I laughed in their faces until one of them showed me a badge and the other lifted his arm just enough for me to see the gun at his waist. They told me I'd been selected. No explanation, no interview, no chance to refuse. I had no family, no record, no one who'd miss me if I disappeared. Apparently, that was qualification enough. They gave me 20 minutes to pack. They said housing would be provided, that my work was important for national security. I remember staring out the plane window that night, watching the land vanish beneath a curtain of cloud, and thinking, I'm never coming back. They called it the High Point Special Facility. Officially, it was a FEMA installation, an underground bunker meant to protect government leaders in the event of a catastrophe. Unofficially, it was a city beneath the mountain, a maze of reinforced tunnels stretching for miles, filled with laboratories, libraries, aircraft hangars, surgical theaters. Cold, endless hallways that hummed with electricity and silence. I was told my job was simple documentation. They didn't want to waste the time of more important personnel taking pictures. So I followed silent men in lab coats from room to room, photographing machines I didn't understand. At first, I thought it was just high-tech research defense, maybe, or aerospace. But the deeper we went, the stranger the shapes became. Engines that seemed to breathe. Metal that looked melted and reformed smooth as skin. Once a lens I photographed sparked blue when my camera got too close. The flash destroyed the device and burned my hands. After that, they switched me to film. They said it was safer that way. Nearly a year passed before I saw it. They brought me to the surgical theater. White lights, sealed doors, a stench of disinfectant, and something else, something organic and wrong. I thought it was a human experiment gone wrong, until they wheeled the body out. It was small gray, vaguely humanoid, but put together wrong limbs, too long, had too large eyes, sunken and black. For one absurd second, I almost laughed. It looked like every cartoon alien I'd ever seen. Then they started cutting. The sound was real. The blood was real. They made me photograph every organ, every incision. By the time they were done, I couldn't hold the camera steady. That night, I drank until I couldn't remember my own name. The facility had its own bar one, without windows, of course. I guess they expected reactions like mine. The next morning, they brought me to a conference room filled with strangers. We were given pseudonyms. Mine was Pixis, after a constellation shaped like a telescope. The man in charge called himself Aquila. His voice was gravel and authority. He said we were now part of Project Antaeus. He told us the truth. The machines I'd been photographing were components of a propulsion system reverse engineered from non-human artifacts. They'd been buried beneath this country for decades. Now we were turning them into a faster-than-light drive. Our astronauts had code names too: Sagitta, Cygnus, and Canis. They would pilot the Antaeus into deep space reach Mars orbit and return after 3 months. It would be the first manned test of the new engine. When I asked why a photographer was needed, Aquila said, "We'll need proof, evidence of life. You'll teach them how to capture it." I didn't know whether to be proud or terrified. Cygnus was the only one who treated me like a person. She was calm, sharp, curious, in a quiet way. When we trained together, she asked about light, about instinct, about how to see. I told her wildlife photography was mostly about patience, waiting for something that might not want to be seen. One night, weeks before launch, she visited my quarters. She said she wanted to thank me, to carry something of mine into space. I gave her my watch, a cheap black wristwatch I'd worn for years. After she left, I found a folded piece of paper in my pocket. It looked like it had been torn from an archaeology book, a photograph of a clay tablet, half buried in sand. On it were carvings of humans looking up at the sky, and figures with huge heads descending from the stars. I destroyed it. I was too afraid to keep proof of anything. They launched the Antaeus at dawn. We watched from deep underground on monitors that flickered with static. For the first few days, everything went smoothly. Then the radio went silent. The scientists said it was a calibration issue, nothing serious. We were told to expect the first images in 2 weeks. While we waited, I was sent back to work. More photographs, more strange materials. Objects that spun without power metal, that pulsed under the lens. A mirror flat black, 30 feet across, that reflected nothing at all. Then the first transmission arrived. It was beautiful. Golden nebulae, swirling dust, the curve of Earth bathed in sunlight. For a moment, everyone in the room forgot to breathe. But there was something off about the images, a faint shape, too symmetrical to be natural, hiding in the color. When I pointed it out, no one answered. Weeks passed. The Antaeus sent more photographs ships, drifting in the void, twisted metal, and then bodies. They called me in for another autopsy. No hazmat suit, this time just a camera, and an order to document everything. The corpse on the table was wrong, like the first peeled open in a deliberate, almost artistic way. But when I leaned closer, something inside caught the light. Nestled in the cavity of its chest was a watch. My watch, still slick with blood. I staggered out of the room, sick and shaking. Everyone wanted answers I didn't have. They made me take a polygraph. I told them the truth. Cygnus had my watch. They told me I didn't have clearance to know how many more they'd found. After that, they kept me working alone. Hours vanished without memory. Sometimes I'd look up and realize it was morning again, and I couldn't remember what I'd been photographing. New transmissions kept coming. Another ship identical to the Antaeus, flattened, crushed, half buried in the ice of Alaska. Yet from orbit, the real Antaeus was still broadcasting perfectly. Satellite imagery showed pieces of the same craft falling into the Atlantic, the Sahara, the Pacific Trench, everywhere at once. And inside those wrecks, more bodies, more watches, more of us. We started to believe that every autopsy we'd ever performed, every grey corpse dissected under those lights, had once been human, had once been them, maybe even us. Then came the final transmission. At first, we thought it was another ship, but it didn't move. It didn't reflect. It consumed. It was black, but not empty. It was aware. When you stared at it, you felt it staring back. Every particle of light bent toward it like it wanted to be devoured. It wasn't a black hole. A black hole doesn't look back. We watched satellites vanish into its surface, moons, fragments of ships. Then the images shifted, and we saw copies, thousands of Antaeus vessels floating like dead whales in a sea of night. Thousands of bodies suspended their faces, lit by a dim, impossible glow. Every one of them human, every one of them familiar. The Antaeus was still transmitting from orbit, but it wasn't the only one anymore. They ended my assignment soon after. No explanation, no debriefing, just a quiet order. You may go home now. I didn't argue. I knew too much, or maybe too little. That was years ago. Since then, I've been dying. They call it brain cancer, though the doctors can't explain the radiation pattern. They say it looks like something they've only seen in victims of nuclear exposure. I know better. It's the same disease that killed everyone who looked into that black mirror too long. Before I go, I need someone to know the truth. There were never any aliens. The creatures we dissected, the wrecks we found, they were us. Copies, echoes, experiments, caught between moments in time. The Antaeus went farther than anyone should have gone. It touched something that doesn't understand life the way we do. Something that learns by pulling things apart and putting them back wrong. They keep saying it's safe, that it's contained. But I saw the last photograph. The one they didn't release. It was just darkness. And a single glowing shape. Too close, too human, too familiar. It was getting closer to Earth. The original recording ended there. The file's metadata shows it was uploaded at 3:17 a.m., then deleted less than an hour later. No one has been able to trace its origin. Some claim they've seen strange transmissions appear in NASA's deep space archives, since then corrupted images showing reflections that weren't supposed to be there. Whether this was the confession of a dying man or just another story meant to scare you. One thing is certain. Every time we look up at the stars, something might be looking back. You've been listening to NightLore. If you can still hear me, don't look outside tonight.